Welcome to Selene's Gateway, Horoscopes from the Moon. It's nice having this image of Stellarium to kind of use as a way of looking at uh, looking at where the sun is and what's going on in the sky. And it's also really hilarious because the way the world looks from my window right now is actually really cloudy. So it's not nearly as nice of an image. So it's nice to have Stellarium to fall back to. On this wonderful Saturday, it's 10:42 in the morning, and according to Selene's almanac, it's the day of Mercury and the hour of Saturn. It just switched over. And as we turn our gaze to the east, and we pull away the atmosphere, we add in the constellational figures. We see Pegasus rising with the Capricornian goat and the Aquarian water bearer. When we pull closer to the northeast, we see Perseus also rising close to the north. And I believe this figure is Andromeda. I have it on a different constellational image setting than I normally do, so I believe that's Andromeda. I wonder if we can get some labels here. Yeah. So Perseus, Andromeda, Pegasus, the water bearer, Capricorn, and then you see Sagittarius or the archer. I took this class from Cameron Cassidy this summer from the Cayley Institute, and I highly recommend it. They're trying to teach people how to use both the sidereal via anchored to the Aldebaran and Antares axis, the way they did in Babylon and Sumeria. And so one of the ways that they try to teach this, they're trying to get people to use the sidereal and the tropical, because though there's a lot of online banter and debate amongst astrologers that, one is better than the other, truthfully though, it's just a battle of names. And so what Cameron Cassidy tries to teach at the Cayley Institute is to use the non zodiacal names for the constellations. And so instead of calling Sagittarius Sagittarius, I'm trying to learn how to remember to call it the archer, because it is both important where the stars are. It's important that Antares is rising at the southern point right now, just because that's how our sky is anchored. And we see Mercury and the sun and Venus and Mars. We see Venus, Mars, and the sun all hanging out together in the Archer. But that doesn't change the fact that it's still Capricorn season, because the winter solstice happened, and the solstices and the equinox points are the way that we root time into space and seasonal matters. So I just think that that's interesting. And we live in a really amazing technological era where I can, pull this up on a screen like this. And even though the sun is hiding Mars, Venus, and Mercury, and all of the stars for the whole sky from us, we can just pull up a app or a computer screen and just gaze at what is up there. Anyway, I just think that's interesting. But let's root ourselves in the moment. I'm getting a little too far ahead of myself. And I'm going to pull up the prayer to gratitude, the invocation of gratitude, to really, as always, root us in the moment. And then I think after that, especially if there aren't any pressing questions right away, I'll set the metronome and offer and just a period of time for us to use the metronome meditation. You can find out more about that on my video called Meditation 1, or I think that's what it's titled. But regardless, let's root ourselves in the moment by offering an invocation of gratitude. The invocation of gratitude comes from it's inspired by the words we say before all else, or the Thanksgiving address, as presented in Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass. And I always like to, let people know that that's where this comes from. It's inspired by. It's not a direct copy of. But if you haven't read Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass, I highly recommend it. So we start with the land beneath our feet. We give gratitude to the land for supporting us all of our lives, for being the foundation that upholds us and the places that we gather under, for being the soil that nurtures all life. We recognize her, Mother Earth, as Gaia, mother to all, birther and nurturer of all. It is through her gifts that we are blessed with these bodies that contain our spirit. Also that all of life is grateful to her, and she gives life to all without demand of price or return. May we give as she gives. With the land, we recognize that those that were here before and were displaced by colonizing authorities. We give recognition to the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, and Cathlamet, and others who thrived for time immemorial. We would like to see a just world where these lands are returned to their traditional relatives. And we give gratitude to the water that nurtures us and gives us strength. We have deep gratitude for its clean properties, and we believe it is our responsibility to help ensure that clean water remains available for all, including our plant and animal relatives of the present and the future. We give gratitude to all the plants. They provide us and many more with food and shelter. We thank them for their willingness to offer healing when we are sick, and we are grateful that we still have people who know how to commune and make medicine with our plant relatives. We give gratitude to all the animals. We are humbled when they give up their lives to be food and clothing for us. We hope to see a restoration of the relationships with both the plant and animal communities, that we can return to a balance and harmony. We give gratitude to the air for providing us with breath and lift. We are grateful to the spirit of breath and wind for carrying our words, prayers, and laughter on its back. And we give gratitude to the sun for providing us with light and warmth. We have gratitude that the balance of power shared between Gaia and Helios can be felt through the seasons, a reminder that all things need rest as well as growth. May we also give and share our light with such wisdom. We give gratitude to the stars for guiding us. We believe that as we shed and return our bodies to Gaia, our souls return to the heavens, that the heavens contain our ancestors, and that through their light provide us with wisdom, comfort, and guidance. They taught some of us the rhythm of the seasons and how to navigate across both the seas and skies. And we give gratitude to the 5 wandering stars, the wild sheep of Babylon, and the grahas of India. We thank them for holding, warning, and teaching us through their spheres of finality, mercy, conflict, love, and ingenuity. And we give gratitude to Selene. She maintains the waxing and waning of the great ocean, as well as the generation and corruption of our lives. She softens the harsh rays and has taught many of us the rhythm of the plant and animal communities. She is the teacher of astrology and midwife of all who are born. May we bring comfort and guidance as she does. And so it is. And so it is. And so, so I'm going to go ahead and bring up the metronome. And we're just going to breathe. We're just going to breathe with the metronome. So once again, in case you're not familiar, this is called this is the pace of inspiration. Inspiration being rooted in the word of to inspire or to gain knowledge through breathing. And the idea is to take 4-second breaths, and each breath when we breathe in that manner, whether it's 2 breaths in and 2 breaths out, or two beats in, 2 beats out, or 4 beats in and 4 beats out, the idea is that you are then breathing at the pace that the earth is rotating. Well, I hope you're able to enjoy that. Go ahead and ease yourself back in if you're watching this later. I don't have anybody visiting me right now. And so I'm just going to leave the live feed running. We'll watch the ocean here. And I'm just going to work on some astrology stuff. Yeah, for some reason I'm just trying to watch some live stream of the Oregon coast, and yeah, it's giving me some trouble. I don't know why it wants me to download some sort of security program. Oh, I did learn that the winter solstice is actually around the time when the whales are come across the Oregon coast. So that's interesting. You know, I always wonder, like, when it comes to timekeeping up here in the Pacific Northwest, I'm always curious about, you know, it's cloudy up here a lot. I tried to make a sundial this year, and I did a pretty good job, but it was hard. It was hard to catch the shadow of the sun consistently because of the amount of clouds that we have. And so I don't think that that was like a reliable way of watching time for time immemorial. I still need to do more research about how Pacific Northwest kept time, how the indigenous cultures kept time up here. But interestingly enough, noticing that the whales are traveling down the coast would be a pretty reliable way of knowing what part of the year you're in. Um, so that's interesting to me. See if this camera's back on. It is. All right. My webcam's been acting up a lot lately, so it's been hard for me to actually be on, to be visible. I don't know what that's about. And let's see. I was thinking about getting some music going so that I had some background music while I'm doing this. But that actually when I come as that comes to mind, I'm realizing that that's actually not a good it'd probably get me censored on YouTube. They'd probably take me down because of having licensed music. So, yeah. So we'll see if anybody shows up to ask questions. I'll be here for a little bit, for at least an hour. Let's see. Let's see. I'm gonna need. I'll be right back. I'm gonna go grab my notebook. I forgot to bring it with me. So I didn't come prepared with a topic today. If you follow me at all, you probably know that I've been working on this almanac thing where I've learned how to calculate days based on where the moon is, and I've found it to be really important and useful as far as reconnecting our understanding of time with the natural significators of time. What do I mean by natural significators? The way that we track time currently is through the Gregorian calendar, and through an atomic clock that everything is kind of like synchronized to. And so we've the Gregorian calendar is just algorithmic, and then obviously the atomic clock is also just like a unrelenting system of math that like it tracks, you know, the speed in which things are moving, but there's no relationship. It's all abstracted from reality, from experiential reality. And so the hours of our clocks aren't related to sunlight. You know, our calendars aren't related to the seasons. The days of the week aren't related to anything that has to do with a month. It's just this it's abstracted and separated from nature. So, what Selene's almanac is attempting to do is, or not attempting to do, it's what Selene's almanac does, is it returns time to its fundamental, foundational, experiential signifiers. Night and day isn't just an abstracted AM, PM, or morning or night or anything like that. It's daytime hours are when there's light, and nighttime hours is when it's dark. And so the hours are listed that way. And the days of the month are connected to the phases of the moon. And the months of the year are connected to both the seasonal expression of the sun's relationship to the solstices and equinox points, as well as the sun-moon relationship of their cycle together. And these are the natural, this is natural time. This is the way we explored and experienced time, is through these signatures. And then it's woven even deeper when you include the other planets' movements: Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Mars, Saturn, because they're expressing a different part of time. So, and one of the ways that I decided, kind of through what was taught to me via the Yoga of Astronomy as taught by Freedom Cole, but also through my lessons through Cameron Cassidy at the Cayley Institute, and also some insights from Gemini Brett's work. I came to this understanding of oh, well, I'll keep the zodiacal names of the seasons that the sun goes through, and that'll be the main unit of measurement of equal division of time from solstice to equinox to solstice and so forth. But then I'll name the lunar cycle after the closest star that the moon will rise next to during the full moon. And so this month, and I'm going to do a separate video that's like more detailed about it. But this month, that star is Pollux. And Pollux And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read from a great source called Secrets of the Ancient Skies by Diana K. Rosenberg. I'll just read a little bit about Pollux. From this book, and I hope you pick up a copy of this book because it's super cool. It's got so much information in it. Trying to find, I didn't have this. One of the struggles with this book is that there isn't an index. So it's kind of really hard to search through. this is quite the amazing book, but it desperately needs somebody to create an index for it.
Yeah, I was way not in the right spot. So yeah, and that
Like, the reason why
I think it's important to name the months after this process of. Oh, here we go.
after this process of like what star the moon rises close to is because of precession, and precession matters. It's important to know where the stars are. And so, as I started in this talk earlier, I was talking about how, trying to learn how to call the constellations by more of their like constellation figures instead of the zodiacal names, because I think that's where, we can create that separation, and that, but also including that understanding, so that we can speak about both equally. Because part of my philosophy, or my idea about astrology, is that it is the unification of the heavens with the earth. And so the zodiacal seasons matter because that's how and when things are happening here on the physical plane in our experiential realm, whereas the heavens are slowly rotating and processing. And so they I kind of feel or believe that the moment when astrology was when these constellational figures were unified with the zodiacal signs, and this science really, this philosophy, this was really like aligned at this perfect moment where everything could be felt and made sense. And then the stars kept going. And I kind of feel like they're just a longer transit that is beyond our grasp of individual lives. And because the star that our sun, which denotes our birthday, the star that our sun is closest to is going to be a full degree shifted away from our sun position by the time we're 72. So should the day switch? Should you move your birthday a day? I don't think so. That's not how it works. But it changes its influence, and like I think that some people will have stars shift closer to their luminaries, and there's this ever present energy that's like flowing and changing, and the celestial sphere just changes the slowest of them all, but they still matter.
And so I'm gonna read a little bit out of Diana K. Rosenberg's Secrets of the Ancient Sky. And this isn't going to be specifically about Pollux, but it's going to be about that very small region of zodiacal space. So it's covering the region of 23 degrees tropical Cancer to 23 degrees 00 minutes to 23 degrees and 24 minutes Like, that's what this whole section is about. And so if you're a sidereal Lahiri astrologer, we're talking about the very end of Gemini, which is 29 degrees and 9 minutes sidereal Gemini to 29 degrees and 33 minutes of sidereal Gemini. So that's how small of a piece of space that this passage is referring to. And so each section starts with a quote from a native who from the perspective of somebody who has a placement in their natal chart regarding this piece of space. Oh, thus be it ever, when free men shall stand between their loved homes and war's desolation, blessed with victory and peace, may the heavens rescued land praise the poor that has made and preserved us as a nation, and the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Francis Scott Key, Venus at Castor, and the North Node was there. Headmost, foremost, commanding Zeus, immortal son Pollux, just has to be first, leading the way, and with the cardinal overlay of tropical Cancer, forging trails for others to follow. Whether at the helm of a ship, commanding troops, building a business, or simply working in a laboratory or at a desk, these are pathfinders, initiators, adventurers, discoverers, reformers, aggressive and courageous, ready to prove that anything is possible. Ptolemy gave governance of the twins to Mercury, but Menelaus asserted that Phoebus Apollo, the sun, was their tutelary deity. Intense curiosity, originality, piercing intellect, and strong ambition encourages them in every kind of physical and or mental exploration. Shrewd observers of the social environment, they seem to have an innate sense of their place in cultural continuum, of the threads, themes, and myths that bind people together. Patriotic, high-spirited, feisty, tough, with fidelity and devotion of the twins and dogs, they are impatient and demanding pioneers, entrepreneurs, explorers, inventors, travelers, seamen, merchants, scientists, artists, filmmakers, composers, musicians, including military music, lawyers, physicians, soldiers. The best of them become historical figureheads who are held up as examples to those who follow. But there is a sharp polarity, and there are some here who believe in the use of force and lead only to dominate, dictate, control, and embellish their own egos. Morse, an aptitude for getting into quarrels. And among these, a few who will resort to violence and murder. Among the issues here are competition versus cooperation, integrity versus corruption, and infidelity, respect, dignity, and freedom versus bondage, force versus reason, cruelty and brutality versus nonviolence. As always, under the brothers, there are sibling issues along with racial and religious concerns, but eternally devoted to each other, they bring hope of a personal reconciliation along with the brother and sisterhood of all humankind. Violence, imprisonment, exile, multiple birth anomalies, head ailments and injuries, possible violent death, as with Castor, the Liber Hermetis says, many will be harmed in the head. The heads of the Big Bear and Pollux are here. Paralysis, invasions, and invasion attempts, great historical battles, assassinations, fires, animal attacks, and meteorite falls.
So what I'm kind of proposing is that this is what the full moon, we're talking about the first full moon after the winter solstice, and in a more observed astrological system, like this is the type of thing that the Babylonians would have like take notice of. They would have written down full moon after the winter solstice, rose with Pollux and beside Jupiter. And then, then they would track the events that would take place afterwards. And this is the history of astrology. This is the type of stuff that astrology is built on, is the observational side, not just simply a psychological or feeling based aspect of astrology, but a more observable construct. So I'll continue on reading from Diana K. Rosenberg's Secrets of the Ancient Skies. In ancient Greek legends, the twins were Argonauts. Argo's keel is here and under Pollux's head. The Liber Hermetis had seamen, captains of ships, travelers, and fishermen. Courage, pioneering, and discovery, the major motifs. Mars was here when Christopher Columbus sailed from Spain in 1492 on his great voyage of discovery. Jupiter at the Julian 336 BCE solar eclipse preceding Alexander the Great's journey of conquest and discovery through the Persian Empire. Its path of totality cut a swath through all of the about-to-be-conquered lands. Other adventures include the moment Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space, was launched. In 1961, the liftoff of Apollo 11. Menelaus said Apollo was the tutelary deity of the twins that took the first men to the moon. Argonauts, astronauts. The 1911 discovery of the ancient Inca fortress on Machu Picchu in the Peruvian Andes, the day in 1776 that Thomas Jefferson began to write the Declaration of Independence, and the day in 1804 under his presidential orders the Lewis and Clark expedition, the first overland expedition of uncharted territory in the western part of Turtle Island, so-called U.S., started out. This was the MC of explorer, navigator, geographer, Captain James Cook, killed by the natives. Menelaus wrote that those born under Argo would be naval explorers. And of physicist Auguste Piccard, inventor of a balloon gondola and bathyscaphe to explore both atmospheric heights and oceanic depths. These stars were transited when the U.S. Marine Corps was established as a separate service in 1798. Their motto, Semper Fidelis, always faithful, affirms the twins and dogs' theme of fidelity. The day U.S. Commodore Matthew Perry went ashore in Japan in 1853,
the start of trading connections between the two nations at the laying of the Pentagon's cornerstone on September 11th, 1941, exactly 60 years before it was attacked. At the establishment of the U.S. Air Force, formerly Army Air Force, in 1947. At the first flight of a liquid propellant rocket in 1926, comparable to significance with the Wright brothers' achievement, and at Trinity, the first atomic bomb test in 1945. Mars was here in 1492 at the deadline. Mars was here in 1492 at the deadline for Jews who refused conversion to leave Spain. And there was a solar eclipse here in 1619, the month before the first African slaves arrived in Virginia. These stars were transited in 1703 when 47 Ronin, lordless samurai faithful to their former master, avenged his humiliation and forced suicide by killing his tormentor, revived reverence for samurai ethic in 1748 when blaspheming atheist slave trader John Newton was transformed during a terrible storm at sea, became an evangelical Christian, and wrote the words of the hymn Amazing Grace. In 1861 was Russian serfs. When Russian serfs were emancipated in 1863 at the start of the virulently racist draft riots in New York in 1934 when Chinese communist troops to escape extermination campaigns began their trek of 7,500 miles across almost impossible terrain. This was the epic Long March in which about 90,000 died. So yeah, it goes on, but it looks like the themes that Pollux is heralding coincide very clearly with kind of the buildup that we're seeing with U.S. politics and the desire to take over Venezuela. So that's probably what we're going to see from this full moon. And I'll bring that all together more in a clear, concise video for the full moon sometime this week. The full moon is expected to rise on the 3rd of January to the Gregorian calendar. And we'll see what it brings. But I haven't had any visitors today, and we've reached an hour mark of recording, and it's been a little disjointed and backwards and unprepared. So I think I'm going to call it a day, and hope to see you soon. You've been watching Selene's Gateway. Oh, I've got two people arriving. Or maybe they've been here the whole time and just listening. If you all have any questions, feel free to pop them in. Um, is just about to close up shop. We're we're looking at this is a haystack rock off the coast of Oregon. Just feel like it's a nice image. I didn't have any slides or anything set up for today. This is just kind of a open office, giving people opportunities to stop by and ask any general astrological questions. In the past, I've gone over some different techniques through these sessions, but this is definitely more of like a less formal lesson, a less formal situation. But unless either of you have, oh, here we go, been listening in the background, is there anything you would advise us to do in our personal lives to help during this time leading up to the full moon? Yeah, I think the main thing I would suggest leading up to this full moon um, is tuning in to Jupiter. Jupiter is retrograde right now, but Jupiter's influence is just being felt in so many different aspects of the of the sky. Here, I'll pull up a wheel so we can actually ground ourselves in some astrology. Though this image of haystack rock is beautiful. Okay, give me a second to adjust. So let's see. Okay, here we go. Okay. So what we're looking at here's the wheel, and what I was talking about with the sky. Let's see if I can make this a little bit larger for your view. Is we have a lot going on in Capricorn, and exalted Mars is there, but Mars and Venus are under the beams, and Mercury is going to be joining them soon. I believe Mercury's crossing over before the full moon. Yeah, 1st of January is when Mercury's crossing over into Capricorn as well. And so everything's kind of
answering back to Jupiter in a way, because Saturn's in Pisces and doesn't really have a load of dignity there. It doesn't have a lot of ability to call its own shots. Neptune is also in Pisces, and then everything's going to be loaded up into Saturn's sign. So it's all filtering back to Jupiter. And Jupiter's retrograde. So a retrograde Jupiter is simply slower at delivering its wisdom and bounty. And so by spending time tuning into Jupiter, what that'll provide is the opportunity to understand more of what the other planets are doing. And they're all going to have a very strong line of sight to Jupiter, and Jupiter's going to rise before all of them and then set after them, and so forth and so on. And so what do I mean by tuning into Jupiter? You could do planetary petitions, you could do a prayer to Jupiter, but you could also just pick up a philosophical book. That's probably my favorite way to tune into Jupiter. I think for this period of time, I think tuning into the I Ching and using it for guidance would be really helpful for this time leading up to the full moon. I also highly recommend the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Sorry, I was looking at my bookshelf to see if I could see it. But one of the things I like to tell people, one of the things I like to remind people is that Stoic philosophy, though I don't fully subscribe to all of Stoic philosophy, but Stoic philosophy was kind of formed during a period of time when astrology was strong and prevalent. And I believe, or I like to propose, that by having all of this knowledge of the future at their fingertips, that they needed a philosophical framework to not get freaked out about the stuff that's coming. Because, you know, as astrologers, as we're using these tools to look towards the future, we can get a good brushstroke of like a broad, shadowy image of something that may be coming in the future, but rarely ever can we clearly say to a certain degree of like how that's going to take form in our individual lives, especially when we're doing these larger framed like event windows. Like, you know, like not every full moon is insane, you know, not, they can feel intense, but like not every transit is going to bring a chaotic moment into your life. And part of that has to do with the fact that we live on these individual time scales that are woven into the moment. And the way that I like to point this out is through solar return charts. And so I'll pull up my own solar return chart here. So perfections is a good time scale. And then it's always good to have a larger framework. So I'll bring up, my solar return chart from this year. And so the beauty about the solar return chart, yeah, yeah, not every full moon has to be insane. Um, and every transit is individually weighted. Uh, the way solar return charts work is the placement of the sun. So it's not always on your birthday, just because that's not how time is actually that's not how time actually moves and calculates. Um, However, your solar return chart is anchored to the degree and minute that the sun returns to where it was on the moment you were born. And this anchors your next year, and then you do the same thing the year after that and the year after that. And so it helps give this like living context to the sky, that's still rooted in your natal chart. I like I like perfections as a timing technique because it helps add a layer of sensitivity. And so, kind of to demonstrate how this works, is in this solar return chart, you can see that the inside is my natal chart, and on the outside is this year's chart. And this point right here is my ascendant for the year, and it's hanging out with the nodes, uh, which has its own interpretive quality. But I'm not trying to do interpretation right now. I'm just showing a relationship. And so by having Virgo and Pisces as my ascendant descendant, that turns this mutable axis into my main power points for the year. So these become the stronger focal points of experience. And so you look for things in those points, like for example the moon is down here in the fourth house of my solar return chart. So that would be something to feel inclined about, like looking at and interpreting, and how much of an influence that's going to have over me for this year. And Sagittarius season was pretty wild for me this year. It was a lot of stuff. Not a lot of details to share, but it was a lot of. I went through a lot of effort of like maintaining my life, maintaining the structure of my work and my relationships and stuff like that. And then you can continue on this path by looking at the monthly revolutions. So you can see here on this side, this is the beauty of living in the modern age too. Like being able to just like cast charts like this at the drop of a hat is like so insane, compared to like the way that it was done even in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Like you would not go through the effort of like it would be a lot of work to go through all the effort of casting 12 charts for 1 year, or 13 charts for 1 year if you include the natal chart, and then looking at them separately. But we get to just do it. So we have this, and they used to do this back in the Islamic period during Abu Mashar's days. He did cast all of these charts. There's this thing that we have a copy of in our historical records, called a Book of Life, and it's a 30-year document of predictions for one person's life, like done at the moment of birth and then projected forward. And it's an amazing thing, and it's just crazy to think about the amount of calculations that they had to do and how accurate their astronomical tables were in order to do all this. But how a monthly chart works, to get back to what I'm doing here, is the monthly chart basically does the same thing as your solar return chart does, but instead of returning to its sign of origin, it's the next month at the same degree and same minutes. So that's how you get each month for the whole year. And so when you're able to look at charts like this, you get another set of angles. And so the second month of this year, we see the sun in Gemini, which is an angle in the solar return chart. And so these are all angular again. And and so we would expect those areas to be sensitive. And so what we would then say is like, oh, okay, well, the full moon in this chart has already happened, so that the lunar cycle isn't really going to be felt as strongly in those peaks and valleys. The moon is an angular, as in it's not on one of the 4 pivot points, though you would pay attention to what Mercury is doing, because Mercury is ruling the sun, and you would also pay attention to Jupiter, because both Mercury and Jupiter are ruling the angles, and they're together in the 8th house. So this is one of the things you would look at, is you'd be like, oh, well, even though these planets are hanging out together in this less fortunate space, because the 8th house is considered less fortunate, they're supported. They're very strong and they're supported. So these angles this month aren't feeling it as hard as they could be. So it's through this process of like seeing what parts of the chart are actually sensitive is how we manage which transits are going to be the most important. And then if you want to take it even further these days, we have the power, because we can also pull up the chart of the day. And so if we look at, let's take a look here. Let's take a look at the next new moon. So that's going to be, from in this chart, looks like that's going to be about 2 weeks. It's going to be in Cancer. So we can look at daily charts. And the way the daily charts work, 2 weeks, so we're going to be probably somewhere around here, is that the sun's moving through the degrees slowly, but it's maintaining the minutes. And so the minutes help keep the charts connected to each other. I went too far. But it went just the day before full moon, so this is probably... So this full moon was probably going to be pretty important, because the sun is in the angles, but the moon is in the solar return angles, and the angles of the daily chart match with the natal angles. And so I would say that this full moon was probably pretty well felt. But I don't remember. And that's the other part of it, is like memorable things that happen in the life. Yeah, so what makes a house less fortunate is that they have natural um the houses have natural understandings and significations. And so one of the things that makes the eighth house, which in this image you're seeing right here is the one with Scorpio in it, uh, the eighth house is less, the second, 12th, eighth, and sixth houses are less fortunate because uh, they don't have a natural line of sight to the ascendant, which is the rising sign, which in the chart you're looking at here is the one with Aries in it, that Aries symbol. And so it's from the first house that we have our most volition and control and like ability to take action, but it's a place that we operate out of, and we don't necessarily get to see the rest of the chart from that position. And so the unfortunate houses are the ones that we don't have a line of sight to from our ascendant position. And this is actually a really interesting concept or construct built into the astrology chart, because they are topics, those houses contain topics that that are not favorable. So like health topics, debt topics, and then money topics. And the thing that's really nice about this, part of this being woven into astrology, is that we often feel like that when bad things happen, when hard things happen, they come from out of nowhere, or they come from left field. They come from a place that are unexpected. And so that whole concept of falling ill because you just happened, out of nowhere you caught a germ and it flourished in your body, and then you got sick, like it's not something that you saw coming. You can do your best to prevent illness, especially by like maintaining your health and whatnot. But you can't always, you're not always going to be successful in avoiding hard things. So no matter how hard you try, there's actually this really great story about an astrologer who was studying Uranus. Uranus was a recently discovered body in the celestial sphere, and he was studying a transit chart about it, and he was like, "Oh, I'm sure something bad's gonna happen." And I really love this story for this reason. He was absolutely sure something bad was gonna happen, and he, so much so that he sent his son off to go to town to get some provisions or whatever. And his son leaves, and he's just like doing his stuff. He's like doing some writing or something. And all of a sudden he realizes his house has caught fire. And he got out of his house, and he got most of the things he needed out of his house, but his house burnt down. But he was so ecstatic about being right that something bad happened that his astrological prediction was correct, but it and he tried to avoid it so much, but it just came to him instead. And so it's it's just an example of life is treated to us through both ups and downs, and the things we can prevent and the things that we can't prevent. And so the unfortunate houses are places where we can do our best to prevent things, but we can't always, but it's never going to be perfect. And Just seeing if Rebecca is still here. Uh, do you feel, if you are still here, I'm curious if you feel uh, seen or heard, or if my astrological advice resonated with the things that you would do to help negotiate the upcoming full moon transit. But if you don't, if you're not a practicing astrologer and you don't know how to read charts very well, the main thing you can do when you're listening to and looking at transits is, if you do know your natal chart and understand your first, fourth, 10th, and 7th, and where they are in your chart, understanding those angles and understanding those dark houses or unfortunate houses is a good way to look at whether or not a transit's going to be, whether or not you're going to be sensitive to a transit, because the natal chart is always the strongest root, strongest seed. Okay, cool. And then if you want, I can pull up your chart and we could take a look at it. I don't feel I'm not in a hurry right now. Totally, totally. Oh, this is this is River. This is Williams River. This is my friend River that I'm talking to right now. Yeah, it's okay for the name confusion. I understand. um, yeah, let me, if you are comfortable with me pulling your chart up, we can take a look at it. This is a recorded video, so but it's not like anybody's going to be able to use it against you or anything. And I am working on your, you wanted a year ahead reading, and so yeah, I'm working on your half year write up. But let's take a look at where you're at. So this is your chart for the year. The inside is your normal chart, and the outside is your solar return chart. But this year, to make things easy for you, the universe has decided that your angles are the same this year. So what you see is your first house of Leo, your seventh house of Aquarius, your fourth house of Scorpio, and your 10th house of Taurus. They're all the same for this year. So we don't have to do too much blending, too much mixing and matching. What I would probably say is that this might actually be an important full moon for you, but I'm not gonna say that it's gonna be a negative one, because it's in the sign axis that your so we'll go here. It's in the sign axis that your sun is in, which is your source of spirit, and it's being very strongly supported by Jupiter. As I was saying before, Jupiter is the greater benefic. It is the bestower of wisdom and kindness and understanding and philosophy and things of that nature. And this is your chart for the month that you're in. And those angles, the angles of this chart are actually the angles of the full moon. So it is going to be strong, and it is going to be important this lunation, but it's going to be a lunation that's being supported by Jupiter. I would say that it's probably going to feel busy. There's just a lot going on. Yeah. So River wrote in the chat, so excited for my half year write up. Everything that you've spoken on for William and I has been accurate so far. And even though y'all contacted me when things were difficult, I'm glad that they were accurate. And like I told y'all over the phone, I do feel like that the stars are showing that it's mostly a temporary setback than a long-term problem. But we'll see how it goes, and we'll see how the rest of your year looks as well when I do the write-up. And yeah, so the interesting thing about your chart for this full moon is that Jupiter is the strongest body in the chart, and that's a really great sign. It's really great to have the strong greater benefic as like leading the way. And so that cancer house is the first house. You see that nice little one there to signify it's the first house. And so when you have Jupiter in the first, it's really great at bonifying and guiding and directing your month. And so so you have help to support you during that full moon. Also, the planets that are mostly going to be in Capricorn by the time this full moon happens Yeah, I think that in general, what you'll want to focus on is maintaining uh, just maintaining your health routines is the main thing I would focus on. Making sure not to neglect your any not making sure to not neglect any routines that help you maintain your health. I know you work with a lot of children, and I know that that can be challenging as far as staying healthy goes sometimes, but that's definitely going to be the main attraction, main concern, main point. Because we do have uh, your son natally in a difficult house, but it's also a house where you find uh, spiritual growth, understanding through meditation practices. Uh, you're definitely, yeah, doing things to help keep the body and mind in as much clarity and in cleanliness as possible is definitely going to be the desire. Uh, so there's a there's a meditation um, that I think would be beneficial for you through this time, and it's about creating a consistency with aligning yourself with the sun. And the the idea is that you either choose dawn, midday, or sunset, whichever one you can make sure to hit the most consistently. And it's just taking 10 minutes to imagine bringing the sunlight into your center, into your heart chakra. Is a easy way to say it, but just your heart center, and uh, using a evenly paced 4 second breath in, 4 second breath out as a way to imagine yourself breathing in that sunlight into your heart center, and then exhaling other stuff out, whatever thoughts you have, or whatever negative energy you may be holding on to, or frustration. And so the reason why these points are important, um, the reason why I like this meditation structure, first of all, is just especially since we're in the dead of winter, like bringing the sunlight into the center, into your center, while there's very little sunlight in each day, I find to be very helpful for getting through the winter. And then also the magic of and natural beauty of those 3 points for the day of the sun is just so cross culturally like experienced as a spiritual connection. So many cultures across all of the planet have had some form of like sunrise, like meditation ritual, celebration, these types of things. It's just those 3 points are just so universally like our relationship with the sun that that you don't even need a true like spiritual construct or religious construct to like lay over it, because it's just ever present. And so yeah, I highly recommend that. Um, so yeah, tuning in with the sun, and then tuning in with Jupiter, and but specifically tuning in with Jupiter through uh like the reason why I brought up Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is because it offers the Stoic philosophy in small segments at a time. And that's also why I suggested the I Ching, is because the I Ching sorry, just looking at my book shelf again. The I Ching offers us the same sort of like calm wisdom in small portions. So, for example, um, in Spencer was here a little bit ago too. I don't know if he still is, but yesterday in Spencer Michaud's live recording about the full moon, which I highly recommend you watch, because he is actually like breaking down the full moon into these other pieces, and looking at it more thoroughly, which I'm going to do a video on later this week. But I was just bringing it up because of the fixed star Pollux that it's going to be near, and how much it resonates with the possibility of us going into war with Venezuela. And so the I Ching that he pulled up, I believe, was really. It's actually kind of funny that you're here, River, because there's just been this resonance. I've been reading this book called Tides, the Science and Spirit of the Ocean. And it came on this story about a river in China. And this river in China experiences this thing called a boar tide. And a boar tide is basically a tide where basically the ocean affects the river's tide. So this massive like wave like comes up and pushes up against the river's tide and like pushes it the opposite direction. And this river in China is the largest boar tide. Boar tides happen in multiple different rivers that are connected to the ocean. And this river in China has the largest boar tide that happens regularly. People go to watch it and stuff like that. And so it's like learning about this river. And one of the things that happens that you can't really like tell is sometimes there's these things that are like maverick waves. And this is interesting because it kind of comes back to this like dark house part of the astrology thing. It's like the unseen forces. So maverick waves are caused by distant storms. Like there will be a storm out in the ocean and it'll cause all these big waves. And so they'll be unexpected and irregular compared to the normal tide structure that you would expect. And so one time, I think it was in the 60s or something like that, there was a maverick wave that hit the tide of the boar tide as it was hitting this river in China, and it like swept away like 400 people unexpectedly. It was just wildly massive like all of a sudden the river had a 33-foot wave like going up it just completely unexpectedly. And one of the nicknames for this boar tide or the river is the silver dragon. And and the card, the I Ching that Spencer pulled, he always does a I Ching card and a tarot card, or he does an I Ching and an animal card or animal book reading at the end of his videos. And like I said, I highly recommend you check out his YouTube video on the full moon. His work is very, very awesome. And he pulls up this I Ching, and the I Ching is definitely describing this river and its boar tide. And then later he showed me that he actually drew a card that was the silver dragon boar tide, and it just like all these synchronicities. And so I'm gonna read from this I Ching. Z-Con is the trigram. Con, water doubled. Z means repeated. And so the trigram of the I Ching is water over water. The yin lines symbolize a deep and dark ravine. The yang line symbolizes the water that flows through it. Hence, Z-Con means both danger and abyss. Water is a symbol of danger in the Book of Changes. When water rushes through a narrow passage, it is quite powerful and therefore dangerous. Similarly, to cross Great River means to attempt something difficult and therefore potentially hazardous. Water doubled means repeated danger, like a series of rapids that one must plunge into again and again. However, water is also symbolizes emotion and more generally a person's heart and soul. The connection between these two ideas, danger and the soul, suggests the hexagram's central theme. When faced with danger from without, one can escape unharmed if one maintains an attitude of devotion. To survive through a period of danger, one must preserve faith in oneself and in the possibility that one will get through. The Book of Changes teaches that even in the times of greatest distress, one must never lose hope that one can still turn circumstances to one's advantage. One must have faith of ultimate success because it is only through having such faith that one can have a chance at ultimate success. To despair is to fall into the abyss. The abyss symbolized in the hexagram is thus both a physical danger and an emotional state. Thus one must flow one's heart to ride out a time of danger. To lose heart during such a time means that one does not hold oneself together. This leads to disaster. And so by rooting yourself in the meditation practice that I suggested, and maybe finding some book or philosophical thing to help you keep a clear mind during difficult times, you'll be able to flow with difficult situations and still be able to ride through with faith and prosperity. And yeah, it's one of those things, like if we spend too much time worrying about the negative things that can happen, then we're also any moment that we're spending thinking about that area, we're also not turning our attention to the positive possibilities that may surface. And that's the thing about the mind and about astrology and about the nature of existence and reality in my mind, is that we can only turn our focus to one thing at a time. And where we spend the most of our time focusing is where we're headed. It's like walking down a road or through a series of caverns or down a multitude of different rivers is the direction our attention is focused on is the way we're headed. And so I just always encourage to keep that mindful when we're experiencing stress, anxiety, anger, sadness, frustration. It's important to take the time to recognize and honor that feeling, but we need to move through it instead of staying with it in order to find the solutions to our problems. But now it is getting late and I do need to go because I have to get ready for my class with Austin Koffick at FOA for year 3, Fundamentals of Astrology. Check it out. It's a great class. If anybody else is watching, it's a really good structure. But thanks for letting me put your chart up, River. It was good to talk to you, even through this lens. We'll keep in touch, and I'll get you your half year ahead written up soon, and get that to you. And yeah, and then we'll talk about it. Maybe I'll include some tools to help you be able to navigate the lens of your chart on your own a little better so that you can enjoy content like maybe Spencer Michaud's content while looking at your chart, so you can feel the interior of your life through your chart without having to always need an astrologer's guidance. River says, yes, I totally agree about the intention of thought towards either positive or negative. Where your focus goes, your energy flows. Thanks for everything, Devon. Thank you too, River. And with that, I say, may the fire inside guide you.